When we started an agency back in the day, about 14 years ago, I didn't know what franchising was. I mean, not really. Um, I think at the time I just knew that I was interested in helping local businesses. That's how we started. But I was also the kind of person that just thought about how can we do something more interesting, something bigger, something scalable, which at the time had nothing to do with franchising. But we did stumble across our first franchise brand through a local multi-unit franchisee in the home services space, and had some great success with him, which brought us into that brand further and further as they introduced us and they saw what we were doing. That was in Canada, and that led to the American side saying, hey, we see what you're doing over there. We need a better vendor partner in the marketing space. They brought us down there. At the same time, we were still doing other things outside of franchising, larger multi-unit corporate type of stuff. So that was, I think, the really defining moment after a bunch of years of doing both, that we realized not that we can't enjoy certain aspects of both, but on the franchising side, there was more of that local feel through and through and community type of feel, versus the multi-unit on the corporate side was much more top down. And while we were trying to come up with local strategies, there wasn't a connection to local business owners and their community. So that's kind of how we got into the franchise space and decided to say, hey, we've got success in this space already. Once we learned more about what it really was, we were like, this is exactly where we want to play. We're ready to dive in. And that was around 2020. So we were a good 10 years into business and took the deep dive in, and here we are. How is a great question as well, because it can look different depending what we want to go into. In terms of what we offer as our core services, we're a digital marketing agency. So typically when we come in and talk to a franchisor and their franchisees to assess the situation, they're looking to, within a given budget, figure out how they can generate the most leads and highest return on investment to attract new business to their locations. And so for us, the core service that has typically involved is search ads, so Google search ads, search engine optimization, social media ads. Those have typically been more of the core, and then it does go further out from there. But there's a whole other challenge in franchising, which is an ongoing thing that we're still learning. Like I just said, we've been in franchising since about 2020 as a focus, as a heavy focus. And so we've learned so much and slowly gotten into more and more brands, and we're seeing all the nuances that make brands different from one another, but some of those common challenges as well, which is how do we as a vendor step in and work in that, within that relationship and structure that exists between the franchisor and the franchisee, to roll something out that really is collaborative and successful. It's a whole other ball game. I could tie this back into my last point. One of the challenges in franchising is that franchisors, in a lot of cases, want to give some flexibility to the franchisee to run their own business, while at the same time they are following a model, a system that was created for them that they bought into. So I think one of the things that can cause problems is if franchisees aren't being a team player and buying into the system and working with the franchisor and the council to be aligned with what is being decided on in terms of digital marketing. In this case is what we're talking about. So they're off, doing their own thing, or hiring someone local or their nephew. Or equally, it can be a problem is just giving up on stuff too quick and moving too quick. So limiting budget, operating more out of fear, treating it more of as a cost than an investment. And they're very quick to give up on something, move to something different, not staying consistent. And digital marketing, especially in the context of franchising, takes building up the data and looking at the trends to help get your insights and learnings and help lift everybody up from that data. That's the opportunity you have. You can't be doing that when people are not really buying into a team mentality and working together. I don't necessarily think it's been changing, other than brands over time may be willing to try different things to make use of more data, because again, building off of what I just said, if people aren't working together, then they don't have access to that bigger data that they could have across all the franchisees. In some cases they do. We have clients who are doing a top-down sort of approach in one way or another, and that gives them a lot of data to work with. This ties into something that we like to think of as something that makes us unique, at least to some degree. We're playing the hard game, I would say, the people game, trying to make sure that we are able to build relationships with franchisees. So while technology is increasing, there's more and more options for technology, and that's also potentially bringing the price down for what franchisees might pay for a solution to do their marketing. Funny enough, I think one of the biggest problems is that the franchisees are so busy doing so many different things. So if it's left to their devices, they're not going to be creative enough. They're not going to invest enough, because they're just looking at it as another checkbox where it's getting done, but they're probably not leveraging it the way that it could. So in our case, we have franchise marketing advisors, it's called. And so these people are not only experts in the marketing space, but they're trained in franchising as well, in like the coaching space. I don't know if you've heard of Angela Cote and her team. Yeah, so we have our franchise marketing advisors train through that system as well, so they can think more like a franchisee, build a relationship with them. And in that case, it's through that relationship, I think, that you can open up the real conversations about this as an investment and what they could all be doing and how that pays off and how they should stick with it, versus it just being a little piece of technology cost. Probably sounds old hat now. We're all talking about AI. The other things are still just constantly moving along, evolving, but AI is the biggest new thing that's coming in, that's constantly changing, evolving. And I'm in the middle of taking another course right now, just to get a sense of what's all going on out there. I think that's one of the biggest things, even from the simple mindset of maybe not necessarily even the technology totally changing the basic platforms that you're doing. It's more about how are we leveraging what is possible for ourselves, becoming more efficient, more effective in terms of creating marketing content. Basic idea generation you can utilize AI for, creating the content itself you can make use of. I think there's a lot of things that are going to continue to evolve very quickly now, and either you're on it or you're not. And so I'm still working on it. I'm very curious to see where our agency is over the next 1 to 2 years in terms of AI. I think we're going to start to see a lot of new stuff happening. The one that I'm taking right now, I chose for a number of reasons, and it's with, Patty and what are they called again? Stay in Your Lane. Patty and Ingrid are running that along with some of their team. I'm taking that course right now, which is really, you can call it an introductory course, but it's always evolving, updating what the latest things are. But that's just a short course, enough for me to get a sense of what's going on again. And then I might even hire them to come in and work with our team. And at the end of the day, this stuff moves so quick, and getting extra hands into help, like what they're able to do to come in and assist is a godsend in a lot of ways. Honestly, I think idea generation, content to a degree, but in a lot of cases with our clients, the franchisor creates and manages the content. In terms of visuals that are approved and that type of thing. Most often, I would say idea generation. There's one in the retail space, probably around 750 retail locations. So it's a big moving beast. They had a lot of need in terms of what they weren't doing online. And that was more and more of a centralized type program as well. So that allowed us to get more of that big data faster again. So in some ways things move slower that way. A lot more big data to work with, which is awesome. They grew, I think by our second year, the return on ad spend was somewhere around 68%. And that's a robust type of program in terms of search search ads, YouTube video, a number of things in terms of measuring a return on investments. We actually had you know how digital is, right? The positive thing is that you can track a lot of stuff. Also equally a challenge, because then you got to say, okay, well, which stuff is overlapping with other efforts? Can you really attribute it all to the digital? At the end of the day, you typically can't. So I think it's been interesting to see such strong growth with them. And the greater challenge has more been about showing the franchisees and the corporate team what we're doing, because it's almost so unbelievable that you've got to zero in on attribution. This is what's working, this is what's not, now what next? So that's been an exciting client. I think it's super important. They all influence each other in one way or another. And again, from one industry, one brand to another, that what that really looks like, where you might place an emphasis could look different on one or the other. But as a whole, to me, the biggest challenge, I think, is at the franchisee level. There's going to be franchisees who are smaller, have lower revenues, so they have a smaller budget to work with. As soon as you get into the ad spend related spaces, that becomes a challenge, because somebody's got to run it and manage it, and you've got to pay for that. You got to throw ad spend, and that's becoming more and more expensive, as well as it just naturally does. More and more people, more and more businesses using this stuff. So the cost is going up, but I think really looking for a healthy balance and sticking with it for a period of time, looking at it as an investment, is very, very important. We see that in our own stuff as well. It's like being at live events in person is still a staple, but then when you balance that out with SEO and some good ad presence, and some content, that type of stuff really pays off. Find some mentors, people with experience. Obviously that depends on this person's background, but if somebody's stepping in to try and help turn things around, or build something that hasn't been given the attention it needs yet, and they're outside of franchising or haven't done this before, built a program, I would get out there and try and find some CMOs or whatever their titles are, the people who have built this stuff out and been across different brands, to learn what's worked for them and to learn what challenges they faced and how they overcame them, or maybe wish they might have done something differently if it wasn't successful. There's a lot of different scenarios, obviously, with the FDDs and the agreement side between the franchisor and the franchisee. There's alignment that needs to take place between the leadership and the corporate team, and what's being said to the franchisees and how they're being held accountable. It really is about another crucial piece being added into the system that has been sold. And I think oftentimes marketing can become this side piece that isn't so much part of the system. So to do that effectively, you need strong leadership. So I think making sure that is a big conversation happening at the leadership level, at the corporate level, about how you support each other, build that out, and get the resources behind you to make it happen, because this thing will just only grow and grow and grow. Get advice from other people who have experience. And if you don't know someone, reach out to someone like myself. I would very happily introduce you to CMOs or anyone to advice. A wise person once told me, I was getting back into music after I'd started my business. So music was very much like a side thing for me. I wasn't putting a lot of attention to it. And then I decided I wanted to set some goals and dig back in. Otherwise, I'd have some regrets. So as I did that, I had someone say, all right, here's your business, which is like your baby, means so much to you now, and the future of it means so much to you. And here's this other part of you that is very important to you, but it's smaller. It's a smaller baby, and you need to nurture it and grow it. So think of it like you've got two things going on, but they're not side by side. One is within the other. So you need to figure out which one is currently taking up more space and the other one operates within. And I think that's been great advice to me, because getting into the music scene and becoming a music artist and trying to grow a career out of that, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, and it reminds me a lot of starting a business, growing your skill sets and growing your relationships getting better at better what you do, getting better and better opportunities. And that takes a lot of time. So I think it was great advice for me to approach it as though they're not two separate things. This is who I am, and this thing I'm growing within that context. I can still be Matt Martin, entrepreneur, founder, CEO of Rocket Barn, and a country music singer. But I'm watching to make sure that I'm not getting too lopsided with this thing under here, that it's hurting what else I've been doing in the business space, and it's worked out really well so far. I grew up like in the country and went to church with my parents and my family. I'm the middle of 5 kids, and so I know that I was singing at a young age, and I didn't think of that as being musical. It just was what we did. You go to church, you're singing hymns out of a hymn book. I think my mom got a keyboard for us at a very young age. I remember taking interest in that. Took a couple years of piano lessons at a really young age. Didn't love it, but the structure of it, but I know I was drawn to creating music. And for me, the big change is when I was 14. My parents got us a family guitar for Christmas. It was just like a family gift. If anybody feels like playing guitar, we have a guitar now. I ended up stopping baseball that year and taking guitar lessons instead. And so yeah, age 14 was the real turning point for me. Going into high school, and then you want to try and sing some love songs with some girl, high school band, and it just goes from there. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm sure it has in some ways. I know for sure that leaning into music and putting myself into those uncomfortable situations. I don't know I can't remember exactly how it was said or where I heard this, but there's different ways of being in front of people that you can get comfortable over here, but then doing this thing over here, your body still isn't used to it. Playing hockey as a kid, I did that in front of crowds, so my body would be used to that. But standing on stage and speaking is another thing. I think starting to put myself out into the position of singing and being vulnerable, being a good beginner, when I know I'm not great yet, but I'm getting up there in front of people. I'm getting up there in front of my team, my work team, It's like I'm their CEO, but they're also seeing me like stand in front of them and perform a song, and maybe it sounds great, maybe it doesn't to them. I don't know. So I think there's been an element of that has just kind of freed me up to be more and more myself, a little more relaxed and personable as I've gotten older, a little less uptight as a leader, maybe. I think so. We'll go with that. One interesting thought about that is I think I know when I was younger and we started this business, I do like collaborating with people to a degree. Like I'm a team type person in terms of a leader. But I'm also the type of person that is a little like ADD. If there's a group of people talking and trying to brainstorm something, especially when I was younger, that was like stimulation overload. I'm like, I just want to take this problem and go into another room and work on it on my own for a bit and then come back. So I think music, funny enough, as time went on, I gained experience in that space through business, but also in music. It was the exact same thing for writing songs. So, getting into a room and co-writing with multiple people is very, very common. And it's a great way to take songs directions you never would have thought of, to obviously get stronger at writing, just different people's perspectives and styles influencing you. Getting into a room with people over and over again is a challenging and sometimes frustrating, even still today, but as a whole is worthwhile. And so I think that is similar to the creative process in my business. And I'm sure I've learned a little bit doing it on both sides, to just do it. Get in a room and collaborate and hear people out and agree to disagree and all that good stuff. On the business side, for now, all I'll say is we're growing in an exciting way. I think, like I shared earlier, we've been in business for a long time. So we've got a great foundation in terms of knowing who we are and a lot of experience under our belt. And in franchising, it's only been like really 3 years. Even though we said we were going head first into franchising in 2020, it was COVID back then. So we couldn't even get out to live events until later in 2021. So it's really only been about 3 years. Someone told us, a good friend in the franchising space early on said, if you're gonna be in franchising as a supplier, be invested for 3 to 5 years. Know that you've got to be sponsoring stuff, coming to events as frequently as possible, building relationships, because we're so used to seeing people come and go trying to make a quick buck. They see dollar signs from, all the numbers, all these locations, all these brands. So we're now at that 3-year mark, and it's exciting to see that obviously our reputation has continued to make an impact, and we've been around long enough that we're starting to see a lot more growth opportunities. And so I think these next 1, 2, 3 years are going to be an exciting time for us in terms of growth, and who knows where that will all lead us. On the music side, I'm going to be working on at least a new EP for the new year, because I released a new song just back on September 6th, about a month ago. And that has had some successes. I've been a little bit quieter the last 1 to 2 years with new releases, and so this one was a more radio friendly, upbeat, fun song. I had a lot of good feedback from industry people and just your average listeners. So I leaned into it a bit more, and it's gone well so far, both on streaming and now going to radio. And I've got some whispers of some good things happening. It's time to get back on the horse and go back to Nashville, because I'm in Ontario right now. I'm going to go back down to Nashville in November, probably for 2 or 3 weeks, and work on some new music and try and get an actual project going for next year. So it's not just a single, it's a set of music to lean into. Well, here's a good way of putting it. I often found, I've spent a lot of time in Nashville, and so you run into people all the time down there. And I generally haven't been the type of person that is starstruck when I see somebody that I know is a star. But then I had an experience where I went to an industry event that was more like the industry side, not really the fan side. At this annual awards show, and Dierks Bentley comes up to say hi to my friend who had brought me because she had worked on his tour. I was like, oh, I felt something in my body that time, because he was like, he was like one of those guys that, for me, even though I grew up in the country, I didn't really listen to country. It wasn't cool. My friends weren't listening to it. But when I was around age 18, 19, 20, that's when I sunk into it. And long story short, I ended up buying 3 albums at a work Christmas event where we had to spend money really quickly at a mall. I was running out of time. And so I was like, screw it, it's not my money. I don't think I even knew who Dierks Bentley was, and Rascal Flatts and Keith Urban. That was like 2005 or something, somewhere around there. So that was the time when you grab the CD, put it in your car, and you just listen to the album, the full album, over and over, and start to love one more song. Success to me is, I think about feeling a sense of accomplishment, but not losing your drive to do more, which can look a lot of different ways, I think. When I talk about music and business, both of those were equally important to me. I realized around age 30, that's when I set my goal for music, that if I didn't pursue music and do something, whether it was a complete flop or not, I would have regrets, and I would feel like just part of a person. I knew how important music had been to me for so long, and I had dreams of doing more with music. So I think getting out there and doing stuff and experiencing some sense of satisfaction from what you've accomplished along the way is important, but I don't think you're ever there. I think that's that false dream of this picture of what success and happiness looks like. It's a never-ending journey. So I think finding that balance of always remaining open and curious and putting yourself in situations that will make you more curious and stretch you out of your comfort zone just enough that you're not going crazy, but keeps you going. Well, I like to give my girlfriend some time. We're actually both very chill, so I just love some downtime. Like I said, I travel between Canada and the US. I'm planning to move back down to Nashville again. So when I am free, I'm either just low key doing nothing, whether that's watching TV or playing chess on my chess app on my phone. Random stuff. I'm just hanging out with people or laying low. I'm pretty go between work and music. Go for a walk outside.